Ich erkenne im Augenblick nicht, welche.
At the moment, I can't tell what strategic exit the Americans are pursuing, especially since the Iranians are obviously negotiating very skillfully, or perhaps very skillfully refusing to negotiate, and then letting the Americans travel to Islamabad only to send them back without any results. An entire nation is being humiliated by the Iranian leadership, especially by these so-called revolutionary guards.
Let's bring in Bloomberg's Balazs Penz. Friedrich Merz not mincing his words there. Balazs, do these comments show that U.S. allies are sort of getting a bit fed up with the situation in the Hormuz Strait and that their patience with how the U.S. has been handling this is also running thin?
There's certainly a tone of frustration in Merz's words. Jumana, I mean, clearly this is a war that the European allies did not want. They were not consulted on, and they feel like they're bearing the brunt of the economic cost along with Asian economies. And that's really hurting Merz domestically. So he is being a little bit more candid, a little bit more forceful in his criticism. If we zoom out a little bit, we see that more broadly over the past year and a half, European leaders' strategy towards the U.S. has been sort of to play nice, to try to smooth things over with President Trump. They felt like they could get more done that way. Clearly, that has changed. We have heard pretty harsh words of criticism from Giorgia Meloni in Italy, from Pedro Sanchez in Spain, from several other European leaders as well. They now feel like that strategy hasn't worked. Their concerns haven't been listened to, and now they need to try a different approach, a more direct approach, something that perhaps plays a little better domestically for them as well.
And Balazs, you say that it's not just Merz, but increasingly other European leaders who are becoming a little bit more outspoken and perhaps willing to take on Trump directly. He doesn't respond well to criticism. How is this likely to shape the future relationship between the U.S. and European allies?
That's a really interesting question. We haven't heard anything from the president or indeed from the U.S. administration, anything directly in response to Merz's words, which maybe is interesting in and of itself. Like you said, usually they don't let things slide, and clearly they have been frustrated with that transatlantic relationship. They felt like they haven't gotten the support from the Europeans that they might have been looking for in this Iran conflict. So this will probably add to that feeling of frustration, of that resentment. But clearly something has changed in that relationship, and the Europeans are becoming more forceful in their criticism. So the question is, will the U.S. be able to change their tack, or will they continue to be confrontative with the Europeans? Will they try to listen to some of that criticism, or do they feel like they don't need to do that because they can do whatever they need to do in the Middle East on their own? So it's going to be very interesting to keep an eye on that relationship as it evolves over the next few weeks and months.
You know, our colleague Oliver Kirk was tracking the Hungarian election very closely, and the fact that since then, Europe has managed to pass on this loan to Kyiv, which had been blocked essentially by Viktor Orban. And I just wonder, maybe one of the byproducts of the war in Iran is that you are going to see deeper integration within Europe and more of a push for what Macron coined as strategic autonomy here, Balazs.
Well, certainly it's a wake-up call for Europe when it comes to energy security and when it comes to diversification of energy resources. And there's another way the Hungarian election may be playing into the way European leaders are treating their relationship with the U.S. This was yet another election where Donald Trump's support did not help the incumbent, Viktor Orban. And we have seen this time and time again in elections across the world, where the party that was endorsed by Donald Trump ended up losing. So maybe that's part of the calculation as well for people like Merz, for people like Macron and other European leaders. Maybe you don't want to align yourself too closely with Donald Trump because electorally that hasn't paid off very well so far.
Yeah, to say the least. Bloomberg's Balazs Penz, thank you so much for the reporting there.